This happened a few summers ago. My name's Ariel, and I live in Georgia, not far from the Alabama line. I drove out to a small town in Alabama for a 4th of July cookout my college friend Isabel hosted. Typical backyard scene. Paper plates, homemade fireworks, way too much food. It ended up being one of the better nights I'd had in a while. Good people, good energy, kids running around with sparklers. I left around 10 o'clock, which in hindsight was probably my first mistake. That part of the state gets really quiet after dark. The drive home was about 2 hours, mostly back roads, long, empty stretches of two-lane pavement with thick trees on either side. Every so often you'd see an old farmhouse or a tiny church with a gravel lot. But mostly it was dark. I had music on low and was still riding the good mood from the party. But I always get a little unsettled driving through places like that at night. I'm not proud of it, but I've always been kind of afraid of the dark. About 30 minutes into the drive, I noticed headlights behind me in my rear view. It was a gray Nissan Altima, and the bottom half of the car looked like it had been through mud. At first, I thought it was just another driver on the same road. But the longer it followed, the stranger it felt. No matter how much I sped up or slowed down, the Altima matched my pace. I tried accelerating 5 to 10 miles per hour, and it did the same. I braked and drifted below the speed limit, and it matched me again. The distance stayed the same, about 6 or 7 car lengths back. On roads like that, people pass all the time. I even moved to the right a couple of times to make it obvious the other car could go around, but it didn't. That's when I decided to test them. A random left turn came up, a little residential road with maybe 4 houses. I took it, hoping to lose the car. About 10 seconds later, the Altima turned left too. There was zero chance it belonged on that road. At that point, I knew I was being followed. My gut dropped. I felt genuinely in danger. My heart was pounding like someone had a gun to my head. I felt helpless out there in the middle of nowhere, not knowing who was behind me or why. I just wanted to reach somewhere public and lit, someplace with people. Then the low fuel chime came on. My car is older, a 2012 Corolla, and the gas light can be unreliable. Sometimes I can squeeze 20 miles out of it, sometimes 10. There aren't gas stations around every corner out there, and I started to panic. I thought about calling the police, but I figured it would take too long and might make things worse. I know that sounds irrational, and I feel embarrassed admitting that, but I'm trying to be honest about how scared I was. The needle hit empty. I could feel myself spiraling. Every sound the car made was amplified, and the road seemed endless. Then, like a miracle, I saw the glow of a 24-hour gas station sign up ahead, over 8 miles away from where I tried to look up options. I turned into the lot fast, parked, and bolted inside, slamming the car door behind me. From the window, I could see the Altima pull up to the edge of the lot and sit there for maybe 10 seconds, engine running, no one stepping out. It felt like whoever was in the car was deciding whether to keep after me. Then it peeled off and disappeared back down the road. I told the clerk what happened, and he offered to call the police. Talking to them didn't make me feel much better. The whole situation had no good explanation that didn't involve malicious intent, and that same raw fear stayed with me for a long time afterward. I made it home and swore I'd never drive rural back roads at night again. But a few weeks later, while watching the evening news, my stomach dropped. There was a segment about 2 men suspected of armed robbery and attempted murder in rural Alabama. The report showed a blurry still from a security camera and said the suspects fled in a stolen gray Nissan Altima, last seen heading east. I froze. That was the car that had been following me. I couldn't prove it was the same people, but everything lined up. The timing, the area, the car description. I immediately told the police what I remembered and hated myself for not calling sooner. I replay that moment in my head a lot. How different things could have been if I'd called while it was happening. I never got an update from the police, and I never saw another bulletin about it on the news. If anything changes, I'll share an update. This happened just last year. My buddy Jimmy is deep in the music world, specifically the dance/electronic scene up and down the East Coast, mostly New Jersey and New York. It's wild what he and his crew have built in just 2 years. Their company throws events at high-profile venues, usually the most well-known club or party space in whatever city they're in, and they bring in outside talent, established, sometimes almost famous DJs. I'm not that plugged in, so I can't name names, but there have definitely been some big acts. Jimmy and I go way back, like 20-plus years. He's basically been my best friend forever. So he always lets me and a bunch of hometown friends into his shows for free and into the VIP area to hang with the talent. It's a nice hookup, and I wish I thanked him more. He had a huge show planned for 4th of July weekend on the Jersey Shore, their biggest one yet, and Jimmy invited me to come down early with him. I went. We drove about an hour and a half with our friend Ryan and showed up at the venue roughly 4 hours before doors. Ryan and I didn't have much to do while the team set up, so we started drinking early. The venue provided open bar privileges to Jimmy and his crew, so we took full advantage. By the time the first DJ went on, Ryan and I were buzzed. It was 4th of July weekend. We figured we earned it. A couple hours later, we were completely smashed. I honestly don't remember being that drunk before. Don't get me wrong. Ryan and I can handle our booze. It wasn't about throwing up or making fools of ourselves. It was just that our impulse control and decision-making went out the window. Even so, we were having a blast. As far as I can recall, the night was winding down, and people were figuring out how they were getting home. Jimmy had rented a nearby Airbnb and promised Ryan and me a bed, so shelter wasn't a worry. What I was thinking about was who I'd go home with. Ryan and I headed to the bar and started talking to 2 girls we liked. Before long, we decided to keep the party going with them. We're not Calvin Klein models, but both of us are over 6 feet, and for some reason height seems to be a big plus at the Jersey Shore. I have no idea why. The girls said their names were Gianna and Marcella. Around here, my memory gets fuzzy, so I might be mixing up details. From what I remember, Marcella suggested we all leave together and keep going elsewhere. Gianna handed us drinks and insisted we get on their level before leaving, despite the fact we both probably already had a ton to drink. These girls looked wealthy based on how they were dressed, so it didn't feel weird at the moment. After finishing the drinks, the 4 of us left. Outside, Marcella said we should go back to her place, a beach house nearby that she claimed was nicer than our Airbnb. I expected to go back to the Airbnb, but both girls insisted Marcella's house was better. I didn't argue, and neither did Ryan. We walked along the beach talking. The girls seemed smart and well-spoken, and it was a refreshing conversation compared to the usual bar small talk. At one point, I felt embarrassed at how drunk I must have sounded. Then I started feeling physically different, not just more drunk, but like my body was melting. My legs felt like cardboard, my limbs and mouth were hard to move, and my extremities went briefly numb. Then it eased back into regular drunkenness for a short while. We reached the beach house, and it was insane. Probably an exaggeration because I was hammered, but it looked like a pro athlete's place. Inside, the living area was both decorative and minimal, like luxury had been dialed down. There were sculptures on pedestals, but it didn't feel over the top. I wish I'd taken a picture, but I didn't. Not long after we got inside, Ryan and Marcella disappeared into the house. That left me alone with Gianna. She leaned in to kiss me, and that's the last clear thing I remember. I remember her leaning in. After that, there's a massive gap. I don't remember getting woozy again or drinking more, but several hours are just gone. I know I didn't black out the usual way, because I have texts from myself proving I was awake and coherent during parts of that time. I've blacked out before and still remember fragments, enough to trace a sequence. This was different. Ryan had the exact same memory gap at essentially the same time, which made it feel less like a normal blackout. The next thing I remember is waking up with the sun overhead in a random patch of bushes more than an hour away from shore. My phone was in my pocket. My wallet and keys were gone. I wasn't even wearing my own clothes. I had someone else's clothes on. The only thing of mine I had was my shoes, but the laces were ripped out and they were soaking wet. My head was pounding and everything felt like waking up from anesthesia. I didn't sit up immediately. I just stared at the sky trying to figure out where I was. The bushes, the stranger's clothes, no ID. Panic started to crawl in. I thought of worst-case scenarios. Had I been in a fight, crashed a car, or been drugged? There were no landmarks nearby, just a road curving into trees, and a few hundred feet away, a 7-Eleven. That was the only thing I could see. So I headed there and asked to use the phone. The clerk probably thought I was sketchy, but handed it over. I called my sister. Her number was the only one besides my parents that I still knew by heart. She answered and gave me Ryan's number. I called him several times with no answer, and I started fearing the same thing had happened to him. Then Ryan walked into the 7-Eleven. We stared at each other for a second, then did a weird, relieved dap. He told me his story, and it matched mine almost exactly. That sealed it for us. We called the police and thanked the clerk profusely. When the officers arrived, we told them everything. At first, they took us seriously, but as we went on, their tone changed. They asked if we might have just drank too much and wandered off. They weren't accusing us, but they were skeptical. I told them it was unlikely we'd drunk walked an hour away. They didn't seem thrilled by that. I gave them my sister's number, and she was already tracking my phone via Find My iPhone. The phone showed up in a parking lot a few minutes away. The officers drove us, and sure enough, both our phones were sitting on the pavement next to each other. Finding the phones back made the officers more convinced we'd just been blackout drunk. They suggested maybe we'd lost our wallets the same way and weren't robbed. We asked them to check Marcella's house, the one she said was hers, but they refused. They implied we were too drunk to remember clearly and gave us cards, telling us to call if we remembered anything else. It was frustrating how reluctant they were to look further or connect us with other units. When they left, I checked my phone, and things got stranger. There were texts from me to a lot of people, Jimmy, my parents, co-workers, and some girls I'd been talking to. The messages sounded like me, calm, normal, and coherent, but they contradicted each other. One to Jimmy thanked him for the event and said we crashed at a buddy's. Another to my dad said we were safe and on a couch. A casual one to a girl said I was hanging at home thinking about her. None of it lined up. I called Jimmy. He sounded relieved and said he thought Ryan and I were dead. He told us to stay put and he'd come get us. Ryan and I canceled our cards, which hadn't been used, but we kept trying to piece things together. The only rational conclusion at that point was we'd been drugged. But even that didn't explain everything. Roofies and similar drugs usually knock you out. I didn't pass out. My text proved I'd been conscious at times. Why go to such lengths to rob two random guys who approach you? And why would someone go through the risk of bringing us back to a house or switching our clothes and then not use our cards? Jimmy thought we'd been targeted, but we approached the girls, so that didn't fit either. We even checked ourselves for surgical scars, worried about something worse. But there was nothing. Jimmy suggested maybe they'd given us exotic drugs. That could explain the weird mental state, but not how we ended up an hour away in different clothes. Someone had driven us there and switched clothes with us. We never got answers, but we didn't stop looking. Ryan and I drove back to the shore to find the beach house. We retraced our steps along the boardwalk until we found the walkway to the house. We rang the bell. An older man answered and asked what we wanted. I asked politely if a woman named Marcella lived there or if he had a daughter or granddaughter our age. He said no. I made up a story about a girl lying about owning the place, and he laughed, but I walked away with a sick feeling in my stomach. I can't explain it. Not quite fear, just a deep, unsettling discomfort, like something terrible had happened that we couldn't uncover. For a long time after, I convinced myself the girls were part of something bigger, that maybe they planned to hurt us and stopped at the last moment. I don't have any updates, and I don't expect any, but if something else happens, I'll share it.